Hi, everyone. You're listening to Radio Cherry Bombe, and I'm your host, Kerry Diamond. I'm the founder and editor of Cherry Bombe magazine. Today's guest is Lidey Heuck, the culinary creative and recipe developer behind the website and Instagram account Lidey Likes. Her debut book, Cooking in Real Life, Delicious and Doable Recipes for Every Day, is out tomorrow, and she joins me to talk all about it. I learned a lot about Lidey during this interview that I didn't know, like how she got her job with Ina Garten. Yes, Lidey worked for the Barefoot Contessa, and her job with another Cherry Bombe favorite, Erin French of The Lost Kitchen. If you've watched the Lost Kitchen series on the Magnolia Network, you might have seen Lidey doing her thing. As you will soon learn, Lidey is a good reminder to go for it if there's something in life that you want. Remember, don't be the one to say no to yourself. As we learned during the Liz Moody episode earlier this year, that is fast becoming 2024's motto here at the pod. Stay tuned for my chat with Lidey, which was recorded at Newsstand Studios in Rockefeller Center. This episode of Radio Cherry Bombe is supported by Open Table. We are so excited that Open Table is once again partnering with Cherry Bombe on our Sit With Us community dinner series, which highlights amazing female chefs and restaurateurs in the Cherry Bombe and Open Table networks. I hope you all have the Open Table app on your phones. Thank you to everyone who joined us in Miami last week at Chef Eileen Andrade's restaurant, Amelia's 1931. It was a great night of connection, community, and of course, delicious food. This Wednesday we'll be in Philly at Fork, Ellen Yin's restaurant. And then next Wednesday, March 27th, we'll be in D.C. at Chef Ria Montez's Estuary. For tickets and to learn more about the Open Table and Cherry Bombe Sit With Us series, visit cherrybombe.com. Today's episode is also supported by Pernod Ricard, creators of Conviviality. Pernod Ricard is a worldwide leader in the spirits and wine industry and embraces the spirit of conviviality, as we all should, and is focused firmly on a sustainable and responsible future. Their prestigious portfolio of brands includes classic names beloved by bartenders and mixologists around the world. There's Jameson Irish Whiskey, Absolute Vodka, the Glenlivet Single Malt Scotch, Martell Cognac, and Código 1530 Tequila, just to name a few. If you are a regular listener, you know my preferred drink is always bubbles, so I love a glass of Perrier-Jouët champagne to kick off a special night out, and I also love a champagne cocktail. My favorite is a French 75, which you can make with Perrier-Jouët Grand Cru and some Malfy gin. That sounds lovely, doesn't it? To learn more about Pernod Ricard, head to pernod-ricard.com. And don't forget, always drink responsibly. Now, let's talk to today's guest. Lidey Heuck, welcome to Radio Cherry Bombe.
Thank you so much for having me, Kerry.
Lidey, there's so much I don't know about you. I don't even know where to begin.
Wow.
Where are you from?
Okay, I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Oh, wait, I knew that part.
That's okay.
Yeah. Was it a foodie family?
You know, it was and it wasn't. My immediate family was very much not foodie family. Both my parents worked full-time for the newspaper in Pittsburgh, and food was just kind of another part of daily life. It was nothing that anyone got particularly worked up or excited about. We had plenty of good food, and we made Christmas cookies and all the normal things that families do, but it was never like sort of the focal point of our family life. My mom's extended family, who also lived in Pittsburgh, was, food obsessed. My grandfather worked full-time as a professor, but he loved cooking more than anything else and would spend his weekends just food shopping. That was like his hobby. He, in turn, passed on that love of cooking to the sons in his family. So my mom has 5 kids, 3 brothers. All of the sons really learned to cook and love cooking. But my mom didn't, quote, inherit that gene, as she always says, like the family cooking gene. Growing up, we would often go over to my grandparents' house for a Sunday dinner or a holiday, and it would be this absolute feast. My grandfather was Italian-American, so it would be meatballs, sausage, red sauce, tons of that white Italian bread with butter. And that was absolutely the whole point of being together, was the food. And so I had these 2 very different opposing experiences with food growing up. And I talk a little bit about this in the book of how it's a good example of how different people think about food, and the way we cook and the way we eat is determined by so many different factors in our lives.
It's so funny you brought up the Italian bread, because I grew up on Staten Island in a neighborhood that was very influenced by Italian food, and we called it Italian bread.
Yeah.
It might have even been a baguette for all I know, but my mother would send us up the block to get what we called Italian bread.
And was it kind of thin crust, squishy inside?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really moist. We never had bread and butter at home. having bread with butter was such a treat. So I have these vivid memories of just slathering on the butter.
And your parents, they worked for a newspaper. What did they do?
They did, yeah. My mom, for a very long time, was the film critic. By the time I rolled around, my brothers rolled around, she had switched to the social pages of the paper. So she covered benefits and cultural events. And my dad was the business editor. So two very different ends of the spectrum.
How interesting.
Yeah.
Does your family have exceptional taste in film?
I think my mom does, although she also loves, a good rom-com. She has very high and low taste. She would regale us with stories when we were younger of the days when local newspapers would send their film critics to the Oscars. So she had met like all these movie stars, and she has great stories.
Oh, that's fun. And how about your dad? What'd you pick up from your dad as a business reporter?
My dad left the newspaper when I was 12 or 13 and started his own magazine about Pittsburgh. The thing that I learned the most from him was this idea of taking a risk and making your life what you want it to be and making your job what you want it to be, because I think he was, not happy there any longer, and he wanted to create something that was his and where he could be creative and write and, lead the direction. And so I think that's something that I've always looked up to and maybe internalized along the way.
Does the magazine still exist?
It does. It's called Pittsburgh Quarterly. Check it out.
All right, Pittsburgh listeners, you need to go subscribe.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
And it's print?
It's print. Yeah,
Oh.
It's print. It's got some longer form pieces, and I do a recipe in it. Definitely writing has always been a big part of my life and a big part of my family's life.
You go to college.
Yes.
What did you think you would graduate and do for a living?
I thought that I would do something with writing. I've always loved to write, and it's the thing that I've felt that I'm the best at. So that felt like the natural career path. And I thought maybe publishing. You think about what can an English major do? And your mind goes to like newspaper, magazines, publishing. I'm sure there are other options, but those were the big ones. So I always sort of thought that's where I would end up. But I remember being a senior in college and feeling like, I don't know if I just want to go right into a desk job and like be there forever. I've always liked to do things a little bit spur of the moment and kind of go with my gut. I was thinking about, what could I do that might be just a fun first job out of college instead of buckling down right away.
When did food get layered over all this? You mentioned your
Yeah.
grandfather. When did you start cooking?
Yeah. I cooked a little bit in high school and baked like a lot of kids do, but it wasn't something that I ever really enjoyed or thought much about until I was in college. I went to school at Vogt College in Maine, which is in a very small town, and it's very cold and dark in the winter. My friends and I started cooking for fun and having little dinners, and I think that was where the seed first got planted. And I had always loved, the Food Network. I was very much of that generation. I had always been interested in cooking, but it just had never really occurred to me that it was a career path. I think unless you're in it, you have no idea the wide variety of jobs you can have in food.
You graduate, you want to do something fun.
Mm-hmm.
Your parents aren't putting pressure on you, I'm guessing, to get a
they were
solid
putting the
job.
pressure on me. I didn't have, they didn't say, oh, do whatever you want and we'll bankroll your lifestyle. There was the expectation that I would get a job and support myself. They have always been of the mindset to just go for something that you love. So I always kind of felt like maybe I could have the two meet and do something and make money and do something I loved.
What did that become post-graduation?
So it actually happened before I even graduated because everybody was rushing around trying to figure out their plans. And I kind of dreamed up this crazy idea in my head that I could go and work for Ina Garten.
Wait, you manifested this?
Well, I had like a 7th degree connection to her. Maybe I can get an email to her. And that was it. That was like all I had. And I thought, and maybe she'll like the email and she'll want to hire me.
Did you share this with anyone?
Yeah, I remember it so well. I shared it with all my best friends who knew me by that point and were not totally surprised. But they were like, okay, go
Did you tell
for
your
it.
parents?
I'm sure I told my parents at some point. I remember my dad not getting it at all.
Okay.
As a non-food person, I don't think he'd ever seen Barefoot Contessa. He was confused because to him, he was like, this doesn't make any sense. You've studied English and you're going to make cupcakes with someone. He just couldn't really compute why I was doing it.
How long did it take you to craft that one perfect email?
Oh, I'm sure I wrote it immediately and I obsessed over it for hours.
Hours. I would have obsessed over it for weeks.
Yeah, what can you say? What can you get in writing that make it short and to the point? And I basically said, I'm Lidey. I was 21. I would love to come and help you do social media. Because that was sort of what I thought I could bring to the table and the only thing. I had been following Ina enough to know, at that time, she was only on Facebook. This was I guess Instagram existed, but she wasn't on it. So I was like, this is something I could help with. And I said, I'd love to come and meet you if you're up for it. I was incredibly lucky in that she happened to be looking to hire someone to help her with social media. So the timing was unbelievable.
It's like buying a lottery ticket,
Yeah.
Lidey.
I should have bought one that day. I think she had taken out, I don't know if it was like an ad or something, but she had posted something like a job listing somewhere that I didn't know about. And so I got in my car, I drove all the way to the Hamptons where I'd never been.
From Maine to
the
East
Hamptons.
Wow.
You have to take like 3 ferries. I arrived at midnight, it's pitch black. I was staying with like a friend of a friend. And I got up and I put on my my pantsuit for the interview because I wanted to be a
Oh, bless you. You wore a pantsuit to your interview. What color was it?
It had green pants. Well, I guess it wasn't a matching pantsuit, but I had like a green cropped pant and a blazer and these crocodile loafers from J. Crew Outlet. I was prepared, how I knew to be prepared. Yeah, I sat down with Ina. We had a great conversation. I brought with me this little plan that I had put together that was just like some ideas and things I thought she could do to help. I just did the best I could. I had no training in social media. And as we all know, it was like such a different landscape. This still feels like recent past to me, but in terms of social media, it's like was so long ago that things were very different.
Wow, that is an incredible story.
And
she
incredible.
Hired you, or she said, I'll get back to you?
I think she said, I'll get back to you. We had a long, I was there for a couple hours and she said, I'll get back to you. And I remember thinking like, well, I don't know. Like I had nothing to compare it to.
And you'd never been to the Hamptons before?
I'd never been to the Hamptons.
So this was in the summer if it was post-graduation?
This was like maybe March or April.
Oh,
it was like
this
I was
before you graduated?
Mm-hmm. I was really, all my marbles were in this.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny. Because I always tell people you can't get a job in media until you are free to take that job. Because media is not looking to hire people 6 months ahead of time, like banks maybe used to be. And
there's no like program that you're entering. You have your spot in.
Exactly. Like consulting companies, all the folks who hire really early. Yeah, that's not media. It's like we need a body. Somebody just quit. You can start in 2 weeks.
Right.
But you were doing this in the spring. Wow. So you said to her, I can start in June?
Absolutely. I think we set the start date. I want to say I had a week maybe after I graduated to like pack up all my stuff and go to the Hamptons where I was going to live full time. And it sounds really kind of wild in retrospect.
Your first experience of the Hamptons was essentially living and working with Ina Garten.
Yeah.
Where did you live?
I found a little house. It was really tiny, just outside East Hampton Village. I got really lucky with the housing. It took me months and months to find somewhere. There's just not a lot of places for a 22-year-old to rent. And yeah, I had a little house with a chain link fence, and it was 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, little kitchen. It was cute.
That sounds nice. Yeah.
Yeah. It was really nice. It was sort of a funny, like all my friends most of them ended up in New York. So I would often come into the city on the weekends so I could like see them. And then I would go back to this oddball life that I was living in the Hamptons. But it was actually really fun. And there were enough people sort of my age who were there for various reasons that it actually was pretty easy to meet people because everyone just wanted to know like who else is here.
Now, what kind of jobs did you have during college?
I always worked during the school year for the alumni office writing like Christmas cards and doing whatever little stationery. And then in my internships in the summer, I did one for anthropology where I had like a copywriting internship and I wrote copy for the website and drafts of things for the catalog. After my junior year, I interned at HBO in LA. That was sort of the more fun way I could think about doing something in writing was TV and entertainment. But I just didn't love TV enough.
What did your job with HBO entail?
My internship was a lot of personal assistant type stuff, a lot of errands. I got to sit in on some creative pitch meetings, but it was very administrative. It was still a great intro to that whole world. I came away from it feeling like this is really exciting, but it isn't my passion. Like TV shows are not the thing that I stay up late thinking about and dreaming about. So it was fascinating to be a part of that world. I also felt like maybe LA isn't the place for me. I don't know.
Ina Garten is essentially your very first boss.
Yeah.
That is incredible.
Yes.
What did you do for Ina? You got her on Instagram?
Yes. So when I first started, she was just on Facebook and maybe Twitter and had like a newsletter that she sent out. We got on Instagram and I basically set it up for her so she could kind of play around with it because I knew she would love the snapshot casual nature of Instagram at that time. And I think we did Pinterest. But that was really only a part of what I did just because there wasn't enough. We weren't doing enough social media for that to be full time. So I also helped with a lot of personal assistant type stuff like grocery shopping, running errands, traveling on her book tour to events and helping get ready for TV and cookbooks. what happened over time is I had this sort of like inside view to everything that was going on behind the scenes with our business, like how a cookbook is made, how a TV show is made, which was just fascinating. And most of all, how Ina wrote her recipes. Slowly but surely, I started getting in the kitchen a little bit more and testing a recipe or two, or being there when she was testing things and just lending a hand. I don't know, something about it kind of struck a chord with me. And there's something really fun about the precision element, but also the creative element, which is like throwing something to the wall and seeing what sticks. And just the challenge of starting with an idea in your head and like fine-tuning it and honing it until it's this perfected dish. After maybe, I don't know, a year or two of doing that and doing more recipe testing for her, I started just playing around with writing recipes on my own. I'm scared to even look at them at this point. It was fun to take the things that I was learning at work and go home and play around and kind of like do my own version of things.
Ina's clearly a great business person to have had a career as long as hers, to have had such a consistent publishing career with all those bestsellers. What are some of your biggest takeaways from the time you spent working with her?
Gosh, I mean, there are so many. One really big one is you have to know what you want and trust your own opinions, your taste, your vision. In a creative field, you end up working with a lot of different people. And I think Ina always stays really true to what she wants, what she believes, and she doesn't let herself be swayed from that. And I think, especially as a first-time cookbook author, for me, like now it's going into that process, having a photo team. It was hard for me to go in and say, this is what I want. But I was trying to channel my inner Ina and say, trust your vision, because at the end of the day, this book is going to be a product of your vision. And if you let everyone else cloud your ideas, it won't be what you want it to be.
Channel your inner Ina. I love
exactly.
that.
Channel your inner
We all have a little inner Ina inside us, right?
Yes.
Okay, what else did you learn from Ina?
The biggest thing I learned is really how Ina creates and tests recipes, which I think is different from how a lot of other cookbook authors do it. She's so methodical. She takes so much time and care and tests these things over and over again. She always felt like at the end of the day, the product is the recipe and it needs to work. It needs to be easy, well-written, clear. And if the recipe can't stand on its own, then you don't have anything. So I've definitely internalized that, and I test my recipes over and over again. I always have like that voice in the back of my head, like, is it perfect? Is it perfect? Because if it's as good as it can be, anyone who's making it is just going to have an easier time and be more likely to come back to that book or that website. It's easy to get caught up with content creation, doing all this fun stuff and making the videos pretty. And at the end of the day, what's really the most important is that the recipe itself works and is delicious.
We'll be right back with today's guest. You all know this, but March is Women's History Month, and of course, Cherry Bombe is celebrating. I want to give a special thank you to Walmart for supporting Radio Cherry Bombe throughout Women's History Month, and for Walmart's commitment to empowering women all year long. Walmart is a big supporter of female entrepreneurs and carries an incredible range of female-founded and fueled brands. Brands like Goody Girl, the gluten-free cookies and nostalgic flavors by Shira Burke, Packed Party, the party essentials, travel accessories, and tech company founded by Jordan Jones, and The Honey Pot, plant-derived female care products founded by Beatrice Dixon. Check out these brands and more of our female-fueled favorites over at walmart.com/celebrate her. If you didn't write that down, you can find the link in our show notes. For this episode, we're spotlighting legendary restaurateur Cecilia Chang, best known for her groundbreaking restaurant, The Mandarin, in San Francisco, and for introducing Americans to regional Chinese cuisines. Born in China in 1920, Cecilia left the country in 1942 and made her way to Tokyo, where she opened her first restaurant, Forbidden City. She opened The Mandarin almost 20 years later and gained a national following for both the food and the hospitality. Cecilia co-authored several books, including The Seventh Daughter Cookbook and The Mandarin Way, which combine memoir and recipes. As Alice Waters said of her friend, Cecilia Chang is that rarity in any culture, a true grande dame, a woman of real and lasting influence. So you worked for Ina for how many years?
It's like six
That's
and
a
a
long
half
time.
years. Yeah.
Wow. And then what'd you do next?
Towards the end of my time working for Ina, was starting to itch for another project, just something that felt like a challenge. And, I had started doing my own recipes. So I was like, maybe I could have my own career in food. And I just didn't really know what it would be. But I knew that I wanted some sort of other food world experience outside the test kitchen atmosphere. I decided maybe it should be a restaurant. And I knew that I would not hold up in like a fast-paced New York City restaurant. I'm just not. That's not my personality. I'm a little more like laid back than that. But I had loved The Lost Kitchen and had been reading about it for years, having gone to school in Maine, and just loved this idea that it was all women who worked there. So again, I kind of got this little idea and I thought, well, maybe I'll see if I can get a meeting with Erin French, who's the chef and owner of The Lost Kitchen.
Had you ever eaten there?
No, never eaten there. And it was like, that was part of the allure of it, was like the elusive way you had to send a postcard.
I think Erin's been on the show a few times over the years, so I'm sure some of you have heard the interviews. But the Lost Kitchen is the restaurant in Freedom, Maine, where you have to send a postcard in advance to get a reservation. But it's very hard to get a reservation there.
Yes.
So you were like, okay, I can't get a reservation, but maybe I can get a job.
Yeah. I did not send her a postcard, but I got her email address and wrote her an email and I said, I'm going to be in Maine. I'd love to come chat. And, one thing I've learned, I think, from both of these experiences with Ina and Erin is if you can meet with someone in real life, if you can figure out a way to get face-to-face with them, I think it's a really good idea and just so much easier to connect than sending emails back and forth.
So then you did the reverse of what you did with Ina. You got in the car and you drove to Maine.
Yeah, I got back to Maine.
So did Erin respond to the email? Did it take a while?
I don't remember if it took a while, but I know she did respond and she said, oh, sure, like come by and love to meet you. Really nice. It was the off season for them too. So it was I think, her slower time of year.
We did a cover story in Erin, so I have been there. It's a 2-hour drive from Portland, Maine.
Yeah. My now husband and I were going to Maine. We were going to go see friends. So I think it was like part of another trip. But I would have gone just to see Erin. And I said, I'll do anything. I will take the garbage out. I will chop onions until I'm crying. Like I didn't have much to offer her because I didn't have any restaurant experience. So I just said, if you'll have me, I'll do anything. So she said, okay, sure. So this was in the fall of 2019, okay, to paint the picture. And I had let Ina know that I was going to be leaving at the end of that year. This was set. Our plan for The Lost Kitchen was set for the summer of 2020. Dun, dun, dun. So anyway, 2020 comes. To kind of keep busy after I left my job with Ina, leading up to the summer, I did some private chef work. By this point, I was also doing recipes for New York Times Cooking, which was a huge thing for me because it really gave me the confidence to feel like I could make it on my own.
How did you break into that? Because that's a goal for a lot of people.
I got connected to the New York Times through someone I worked with Ina, and at the time they were looking to add a lot of contributors for their website and app. They were growing a lot at that time. So I feel like they were really generous and gave me a shot. I still remember like how nervous I was before submitting those first recipes. And they're still two of my most popular recipes. So I feel like it worked out okay.
What were the two recipes?
There was a sheet pan salmon niçoise, which is a great one. Everyone loves a sheet pan. And another one was a fun play on like a picnic potato salad with mashed chickpeas and herbs.
In the little bit that I've gotten to know you, you're so modest. You're not charging through life asking for things that you want. But at the same time, you clearly are very good at asking for what you want because that's how you've gotten to this point.
I mean, I guess so. I don't think of myself as someone who's like barging into rooms and saying,
you are not.
Read my resume. But I have felt so much respect for the women who I've been fortunate to work for. And I think so coming to them from a place of, I admire you and being modest, I'm honest about what I can bring to the table and just seeing if they'll give it a shot. I think I've just always had this attitude of, if you do it the right way, what's the worst that can happen?
We had Liz Moody on the podcast, I think the start of the year. Liz is so brilliant. She does a lot of, I don't know if she would call it self-help, but I call it self-help work. Liz's latest book is 100 Ways to Change Your Life. And one of her top pieces of advice that's in the book is don't be the person to say no to yourself.
I love that.
And I feel like you are very good at not saying no to yourself.
I mean, it's hard. I say no to myself in some ways all the time with self-doubt. And, I think on the inside, I have the insecurities that we all have. But I also think if I don't make things happen, like they're not going to happen. Once you've done it once you've put yourself out there, once it gets easier. And there are things that, that haven't worked out. It's not like everyone's just like, oh, here's this and here's that. And there's a lot of waiting and following up. I've gone after the things that have been really, really important to me. But I think really thinking hard about what you want and why you want it is really important before you go out and just ask for it.
Okay, you left us on a little bit of a cliffhanger. It's 2019.
Yes.
You agree to go work for Erin French in 2020. What was your start date supposed to be?
I can't remember, but I think it was maybe late May. I was going to start as the restaurant was ramping up to open for the season. I remember talking with my dad before I even left the job with Ina, like in the fall, and he was saying, are you sure you want to just quit your job and figure it out? I think there might be a recession next year. And I was like, recession, I'll figure it out. His prediction did come true that 2020 was not what we expected, but I had a phone call with Erin sometime in April, and she said, look, I don't know what's going to happen. We can't open now. We want to open some way in the summer, but I don't know. No one knew what was going to be possible. She said, you're welcome to come and show up, but I can't promise you any number of hours, or I can't promise you that it's going to be what we thought. And I really, at that point, I was doing recipes for the Times. I was doing a bunch of virtual cooking classes and trying to make cooking videos. I thought, you know what, I can do all of that in Maine. And I had already rented this little apartment in Belfast, which is near Freedom. So I said, let's do it. And it was not the summer, of course, that anyone thought it was going to be. But for me, it was a really incredible experience. And I'm so glad that I did it despite not knowing, because I think I was able to leave the house and go somewhere new and have this new experience every day. And it was a really interesting time to be working in a restaurant.
Did you know that Erin was filming a TV show and that there would be cameras there?
I didn't know until I got to Maine. And Erin said, we're doing a TV show. Would love for you to be a part of it, just in the sense of like working on the staff with everyone else. I was like, okay, great. I remember it was my first day at the restaurant. The Lost Kitchen opened for lunch primarily for the summer because it could be outside and it was just easier. And so my first day, Erin was like, okay, I'm going to have you break down 40 or 50 raw chickens into pieces to make fried chicken. They were filming that day. And I think I'd maybe, working for Ina, broken down a chicken once. I'm sure she showed me how to do it a few times. But it's one of those things, if you don't do it again and again, you look at this thing, you're like, where do I start? And I was on camera, and it was just excruciating. I was so slow at everything that entire summer. I remember being like, I don't know if I'm cut out for this at the end of the day.
Were you able to go back and watch the show, or was it too painful to watch?
No, I did watch it. I don't think that maybe the chicken cutting did make it. I watched it and, was not totally proud of my performance in every moment, but I also think it was maybe relatable for people watching at home. There was one scene where I'm making an herb bundle that went on the fried chicken. It was like rosemary and lavender, and she stuck it right in the fried chicken, so it like smells really good when she serves it. And I was sitting there with Carrie, who is another one of the women at the restaurant, and we're on camera and we're making the herb bundles, and she had a pile of like 40 herb bundles, and mine was like 12. I just was so slow. And in the show, she goes, Lidey's a little slow. And it was true. I mean, I don't think I'm cut out for restaurant work. It's not who I am. But it was really incredible to work in a restaurant and see what it's really like and be a part of that.
Erin French is another very smart, very creative human being. I'm sure you learned a ton from her. And not just that you didn't want to work in restaurants. What were some of the takeaways working for Erin?
This was a takeaway particularly because of what happened with COVID, but just seeing Erin and her whole team, but especially Erin, adapt to the ever-changing situation and really figure out, how can I make this restaurant run? And she is so incredible. I mean, she, in the beginning of the 2020 season, her purveyors and the farmers she sources from, no one was buying from them. So she decided to open a farmer's market so people could shop for produce to bring home. Her community is always in the back of her mind with every decision she makes. And I think it's so important. And I think it's really easy to just be focused on yourself and your goals and your success. But I think bringing up the people who are around you and making them feel part of it, and also sharing your success with them, is really huge. And that's one thing that I've learned from her. I mean, there's so many. How to make food look so incredibly beautiful. You can't even believe it. She uses a lot of edible flowers that I had never dealt with. So I've learned the names of a lot of them and which ones you can eat and which ones you can't eat.
And Erin has great recipes also.
Yes.
I love her cookbooks.
I mean, her cookbooks are truly a work of art. And also her food and her recipes are really accessible for home cooks because her food is really simple at heart and she uses really good ingredients. But a lot of the food are things that home cooks can easily make at home. So absolutely, her recipes are great.
Let's talk about this cookbook.
Okay. I can't believe it.
So exciting. We're going to celebrate with a fun party.
It's going to be so
with
exciting.
Lots of our friends.
Mm-hmm.
I've got the book in my hands and I'm looking at the pretty end papers, which are the pages right inside when you open the book. Mm-hmm. Looks like you were very inspired by a dish towel fabric. If I had to guess.
I was. I really wanted the book to feel homey and cozy. So a lot of the prints and the textiles throughout are meant to feel like something that you would have at home.
Cooking in real life, cooking IRL. How'd you come up with the title? That's always such a hard part.
Oh, it was hard, actually. Long lists of ideas and food words and just crossing things out and writing other ideas. I think it's really hard because it's, in some ways, you feel like you're minimizing this giant book that you've written into like one phrase, and it's hard to come up with the perfect phrase. There was also something moody about the title that I liked, like Cooking in Real Life. I kept thinking to myself, it's like cooking in Technicolor. It's like evocative of a place and a feeling that is a little hard to put your finger on. I liked that the title is mundane, Cooking in Real Life, and yet it feels like something more at the same time.
And how many recipes are in here?
There are about 100 recipes.
Which recipe would you say is the best gateway recipe to your kind of cooking?
That's a really good question. I think a great gateway recipe would be one of the soups, especially because it's March and it's still chilly in much of the country, particularly the ratatouille lentil soup. I think it's a good gateway recipe because it's an example of how you can take something that's really classic and basic, like a good lentil soup, and zhuzh up a few of the ingredients and make it feel like something you've never had before. So in this case, I use all the veggies that go into a traditional French ratatouille. A ratatouille is like stewed summer vegetables like eggplant, zucchini, onions, tomatoes. And in this recipe, I use a lot of oregano and fresh basil. It feels like this fragrant, fresh spin on a soup that's usually kind of hearty. And I just love it. Yeah.
You can eat it while you watch the best food movie ever, Ratatouille.
That's so true.
Right?
I think I actually wrote something about Ratatouille in the head note. And I thought that Ratatouille was the name of the rat. And I was like, Ratatouille, also known as a famous cartoon rodent. And then I was rereading.
That's Remy.
It. I know.
That's Remy.
I know. Can you imagine if that had made it in? Sheesh.
Well, thankfully, you've got your editors
Yes.
looking out for you. Tell me which recipe is the most personal to you.
There are a couple of family-inspired recipes, but one that's particularly special to me has come from my Aunt Candy, who is aptly named because she's a pastry chef. She's married to my Uncle Mike, so I grew up with them in Pittsburgh, and she made our wedding cake.
She's a pastry chef named Candy.
I know. It's like meant to be.
Given name or is that her nickname?
Candace, yeah, her given name.
Oh my gosh.
And she very generously shared with me her recipe for her flourless chocolate cake, which is one of the most like decadent, rich, fudgy chocolate cakes. It has all these like great little cracks on top, and you dust it with cocoa powder, and it's just a little heavenly slice of fudge. And it was really important to me and meant a lot to me to have a family recipe in this book, especially because my grandfather has not been with us for a number of years. So to be able to include my family in this book was really important to me.
That's very sweet.
Yeah.
Which recipe do you think will be the most popular?
Ooh, I can't wait to see. Honestly, it's just fun to see the people who have gotten early copies to kind of see which ones they gravitate towards, because it's not always what I expect. But I think that the short ribs are going to be a big hit. They're a great holiday recipe. They have cranberries and port and rosemary and shallots. So just a great like classic wintry recipe with a little twist with the whole cranberries. And then another one that I hope it's popular because I'm really excited about it, is the ice cream sandwiches with blueberry muffin cookies and strawberry ice cream. These are, I would say, a family-ish recipe because I've been making them every summer for my in-laws who I spend July 4th with for their 4th of July party. It's kind of a secret recipe for a long time, and I'm finally sharing it. So I hope that everyone else feels the way that I do about them and loves them.
Can you use frozen blueberries?
You can. I would probably drain them. So I would defrost them and drain them so there's not too much extra juice. But absolutely, you could probably use wild Maine blueberries too. It'd be
I've
really
always
good.
got my frozen Maine blueberries in my freezer. I love those.
I love them too.
Okay, this is very exciting. You're doing a huge cookbook tour. Tell us where you're going.
I'm going to Pittsburgh, which I'm really excited about. I love being from Pittsburgh, and I feel like it doesn't get enough attention and credit for what a great city it is.
I told you this. We stopped there on the Cherry Bombe cookbook tour.
I'd love to hear
Pittsburgh.
that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to go to Maine. I'm going to go to Portland, Maine, Boston, DC, Chicago. I'll be in New York for a couple different events. Seattle.
How do folks find out about all these stops and the tickets?
I have all the info on my website. It's all spelled out. And they're all different kinds of events, which I'm excited about. Some are signing, some are like little parties, some are shop and signs where you can shop at whatever home goods store we're doing the event at.
Sign.
I know.
I don't think I heard
Isn't
that
that
term
fun?
before. That's fun.
Yeah.
Let's jump to the speed round. What beverage do you start the day with?
I start the day with lukewarm water because I read years ago that it's good for you. And then I have my coffee.
How do you take your coffee?
I like my coffee pretty weak with some whole milk.
Weak?
Just medium to medium weak. Yeah.
Okay. What is a treasured cookbook?
One of the first books I remember flipping through when I was a kid was called Mom's Big Book of Baking. And it's by Lauren Chapman, who I've since gotten to know, which was a real exciting moment for me. But it's just a simple book of very basic baking recipes. But it was the first book that I paged through and kind of put like little Post-its on and made the brownies and the banana bread. And to this day, there's something so classic and simple about it that I still flip through it because she just has this way of making you want to make everything. And there's nothing flashy about it, but it's just has a special place in my heart.
Favorite food movie?
This isn't a food movie per se, but I love Moonstruck and how food plays a big part in that movie, just sort of like the Italian-American, the food they're eating at home and how Nicolas Cage's character works in a pizza shop. I just love that movie.
I think you're the first one to say Moonstruck. Love it. What's always in your fridge?
I always have a package of salted butter in the fridge. I mean, I guess sometimes it's at room temperature, but that's just one of my favorite little treats on an English muffin.
What is your favorite snack food?
Granola. I have a pretty major sweet tooth. And so I've been experimenting with ways to make my granola be more of a meal. So I've add tons of different nuts and seeds. I could just eat granola all day.
What was your favorite food as a child?
I loved oatmeal as a child, and I still love oatmeal. I often say oatmeal.
You were a wild and crazy child.
I mean, can you imagine? I just loved it. I love how mushy it is. I love all mushy foods. I mean, my next book is just going to be foods that don't require chewing. It's going to be a major hit.
No one has come out with mushy foods yet as their title.
I mean, it's catchy.
Claim it now, mushy IRL.
Yeah, that's a corner of the market.
You could own that niche.
Yeah.
When you were working in restaurants and working with Ina, what was your footwear of choice?
That's a great question.
What did you wear to protect those toes?
Well, I mentioned earlier that when I did my interview with Ina, I wore a blazer and pants. And in the beginning of that job, which was really my first job after school, I know it's really embarrassing, but I had pencil skirts and I had little button-up shirts and ballet flats. So that was era one, was the young professional. And Ina would wear running shoes and comfortable clothing because we were on our feet all day. So very quickly that morphed to wearing either sneakers or boots. I think because I'm not a restaurant chef, I've never really gotten so into the dance goes. Also, I'm too tall for dance goes. They add 2 inches and I'm already 5'11". But jeans and comfortable shoes, it was a casual workplace for sure.
Favorite kitchen implement?
This might be a silly one, but I have this little metal citrus reamer that fits perfectly on the 2-cup liquid measuring cup top, at the top of the measuring cup. And I put it on and then I squeeze the lemon right into the measuring cup. And it's so simple, but it's so satisfying to me that it fits perfectly on all the measuring cups.
It never even crossed my mind that those are designed to fit on that, but I bet they are.
And I don't even know where it came from. It's one of those things that I've just had forever. I'm sure you can get one online.
And I squeeze a lot of
citrus juice. And it's kind of sharp. It's kind of sharp on the top, so it's really good for getting all the juice out.
Huh. Yeah. Oh, that is a good tip. I love that. Okay, last question. If you had to be trapped on a desert island with one food celebrity, who would it be and why?
Okay, this one actually isn't that hard for me. It's going to seem I don't know, a little bit of a cheesy answer, but I would say Erin French because she's, first of all, so good at foraging. So she would find all kinds of amazing mushrooms and things we could eat. She's just a Mainer. Together, we could build a house. We could start a whole new life, the two of us. She knows how to do so many things, and she's such a tough cookie. And I would feel so much safer on a desert island with her.
Oh my God, I'm dying laughing just when you said we could start a whole new life. Most people assume they're going to get rescued.
No, I'm sorry. The question wasn't who do you want to spend the rest of your life with? I'm
oh, Lidey, that's
I
so
guess,
funny.
Yeah, we're living there forever. We don't need to be rescued.
Well, I hope you and Erin are really happy.
Thank you so much.
On your island.
Thank you.
And the house that you build and all the food that you make.
It's going to be really warm and cozy. It'll be great.
Lidey, you are the best. It was so
Kerry.
Nice to get to know you a little better.
Yeah, this was so much fun.
Thank you for sharing your improbable story with all of our listeners. And I really hope that people just take away to go for it.
Go for it. You only live once. YOLO. Just go for it. What's the worst that can happen?
Absolutely. Well, congrats on the book.
Thank you for having me.
That's it for today's show. Our theme song is by the band Tra La La. Joseph Hazen is the studio engineer for Newsstand Studios. Our producers are Catherine Baker and Elizabeth Vogt. Our associate producer is Jenna Sadhu. And our editorial assistant is Londyn Crenshaw. Thanks for listening, everybody. You're the bomb.